The Justice Beat is dedicated to the 1 in 3 Americans touched by incarceration. Justice Beat is where we discuss all things justice.
As we continue our series in recognizing trailblazing women in the justice reform space, the Justice Beat Talk Show will host Promises Huff as its featured guest this Saturday, March 21st. Join us. Spread the word. Good morning, Justice Beat listening audience, and thank you for joining us again on this beautiful Saturday morning. And I am hoping that everyone is having a great day in spite of the circumstances that we are facing in this nation. As you may know, we have decided to broadcast in a different format today, given the restrictions on some movement and suggestions that we do not gather in groups of more than 10. And so we are doing a remote broadcast with our guest today, who was originally scheduled to be in studio with us live from Tennessee. And our guest today is Miss Promises Huff. Good morning, Promises.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for being flexible and
yes, ma'am.
Really working with us to still make this happen, okay?
Absolutely.
I want to tell our listening audience a little bit about you. Coach Promises is a certified life reentry coach, and she's originally from Rayford, North Carolina. She's a proud HBCU graduate of Fayetteville State University in Fayetteville, North Carolina. She is married to her college sweetheart, Coach William R. Huff. Yes. She is the proud mother of 4 children and a dog. With experience from law enforcement world, she has a strong passion and vision to one day provide employment for individuals who desire to have a second chance in life through reentry. I want to welcome Ms. Huff this morning.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it is our pleasure. It is our pleasure. I want to let our listening audience know we will not do call-ins to the show today. However, we are monitoring our Facebook show page so that if you have any questions or comments, please post them on our show page and we will be monitoring and making sure we get your questions answered. Okay. All right, let's start now, Ms. Huff. Yes. Now, this segment is going to be presented in 2 formats. The first segment, we will discuss your role or prior role as a corrections officer. So I want to learn a little bit about your background in terms of how did you come to enter the world of corrections?
Well, actually, it wasn't my first choice. I had my eyes on being a cosmetologist. That's what I really wanted to do. But I wanted to go to a 4-year college, and I knew that the college I was going to have to attend was only a 2-year. So when I got to Fayetteville State and realized that they didn't have cosmetology, I was like, oh, bummer. So I was like, okay, so my next best thing was to do criminal justice. I said, okay. I want to do that. I wanted to initially be in homicide and forensics, but they didn't back then, a long time ago. They didn't have all of those courses that I needed. So I just basically had to take the basics just to get into criminal justice. And it was still a peak of my interest. So I just stuck it around with it.
Okay. So, all right. So from cosmetology to criminal justice. All right.
Yeah.
All right. So what was your first, was a corrections officer your first position or?
Yeah, actually being a jailer, that was my first position right outside of graduating. As soon as I graduated, I was like, okay, so what do I do now? Do I go and fill out applications for this or that? But at that time, they were having a job fair, I want to say, and the county sheriff's office was there. They were hiring for the jailhouse. So I was like, oh, okay, so I went for it.
Right. Okay. Well, now, becoming a jailer.
Yes.
Did you have any hesitations, reservations working inside of a jail? What was that experience like? Can you remember your first day on site?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm gonna just keep it 100 with you. I was scared, but I knew it was like being scared and excited all at the same time because it was something that I had gained my degree in, and I was like, okay, I got my degree and I'm just about to go in here and I'm gonna do this thing. But it was scary because it was new. It was uncharted territory. So even though I felt like I had all the book sense, I didn't know if it was gonna play, book sense, street sense, what's gonna happen. I'm just gonna have to go in here and see what happens. But it was scary at first because I didn't know. I didn't know what was going on. Yeah.
Okay. So now let's talk a little bit about how you were received as a female jailer. Were you, I've heard stories about that experience and how sometimes women have to take on a more masculine persona in interacting with the men per se. How did that shape you in any way?
Let me just say this. It started out as being an okay position because, you have your males and your females, but there were very little females. Maybe 2 or 3 when I came in, but then there were also female officers that were there, but it wasn't very many of us. And it didn't even have to do with anything as far as being an attractive female officer. It was just the fact of knowing that the jail had officers that were female. Mm-hmm. And because we were around, you might as well say 90% male inmates, it was tough. It was hard. Because you go in it with the mind of, I'm coming in here and I'm going to do my job. as this officer, but they don't look at you as an officer right off gate. They see you as a female.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm trying to look at this girl, look at this woman, and their eyes are glued on you. Forget that badge, forget that utility belt. I want to see who she is. Like, who is that? Because a lot of these guys and females that are in there, some of them have been in there 2-3 years prior to me even getting there. So it was like a relief for them to see fresh new female faces, and knowing that they wouldn't see females again. You know, they took advantage of that. So I saw some rough stuff, but it was hard, but I maintained.
So what is the role of a jailer?
Well, the role of a jailer is not too much different from corrections. I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. You know, jailers are officers of the jail, and correctional officers are officers of the correctional facility. So we pretty much do the same thing. We do security checks. We make sure that the inmates are prepared for what they need for the day, days to come, every shift, because there were, back then, I don't know how it is now, there were 12-hour shifts. So you're there with them for 12 hours. So you have to make sure that they have everything that they need. And if they don't, you know, you're there to provide the bare necessity. I'm gonna say that. Okay. So it's basically just making sure that they're secure. You're providing security for the perimeter, whether it's inside of the pod that you're working in, or if they're out in recreation, you have to make sure that they stay safe, because there's always something going on all the time.
Okay. So now let's talk a little bit about some of your experiences in terms of how the jails are administered, whether it has to do with accessing medical care and treatment, visitation issues. What are some things that you saw that perhaps did not sit well with you as a jailer? Or you? Go ahead.
The security of it all. When we first started working at the jail, we were in the old jail, what's considered the old jail. It was connected to the courthouse. And probably a few months, couple weeks, up until about a month later, in that process, they were building what they have now, which is still considered the new jail. So in the old jail, there wasn't a whole lot more up-to-date security. And keep in mind, this was 2003. Okay. So back then, it was just all the inmates in one big cell, whether it was 18 to 25, could have been more. Everybody's in that one space. So it's kind of hard, you know, to see what's going on at all times, you know, when you're coming through doing your security checks, when it's time for them to go to the infirmary to get checked out for whatever reason. It wasn't hard to transport them from one position to another, because we never allowed them to travel in groups. And if we did, it was maybe 2 or 3 inmates, and then you had 2 or 3 officers also. So it wasn't that bad. It just came down to when it was securing the area that they were housed in, because everybody was on top of each other. So somebody could have easily gotten beat up or gotten shanked. You never would know until it was over with, because everybody was on top of each other. It wasn't enough space for everybody. But once we transitioned to the new jail, it was a lot more security. Now, as far as the cameras, I didn't like the fact that a lot of the cameras that were placed inside of the new jail weren't all working. They were in place. Okay. They were in place, but you could see when you were inside of the pods, the areas that they were placed, you know, it was like the little bubble camera. So with it being a little bubble camera, 9 times out of 10, it wasn't on. Or it just was not connected to the system because it was brand new and it was still trial and error.
Okay, so that presents a safety issue and security issue for both the jailer and the inmates.
Absolutely.
So and so that's why. I mean, was that intentional? Was it an issue with they're just inoperable? They needed to be replaced. I mean, what caused that?
You know, in all honesty, I don't think that it was intentional. I think it was a matter of, because it was so much pressure, in my opinion, from moving the inmates from the old jail to the new jail at that time, and it was so much chaos going on, and it was like the longer they were at the old jail, the more inmates we had coming in. We had people coming in that was being incarcerated, and it was every day. So it's a continuous movement of people in and out of there. So they had to, be pressured a little bit, a lot of little fire up on them to get them to move to the jail. So everything wasn't done, everything wasn't in place, but it was just a matter of, okay, hey, let's get these guys and these girls out of here. Let's move over to this new facility so we can at least make sure that everybody pretty much has their own space. But as far as the security of it all, I just don't think it was planned out as well as it should have been. It should have, maybe taken a little bit longer to make sure everything worked properly, because there were still problems with control panels, having doors open and getting stuck. So, it was just a matter of, I think, just waiting a little bit longer, and they didn't.
Okay. So in my professional private side life, I see a lot of complaints involving jails and prisons.
Right.
And a lot of them have to do with accessing the inability to access medical care and treatment. What is your observation about that? Is that an issue? Like, for example, individuals who want to file grievances and complaints and grievances not being attended to in a timely manner, or the responses that come back are inadequate responses. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Absolutely. There were some times when we had inmates that needed attention. Some just wanted to get out of the pod just to go be nosy, see what's going on. I mean, that was life for them. Maybe in hopes of they would see their homeboy, see somebody they knew, so they could talk. And a large majority of the time, it wasn't about, I just need to go to get some attention. But for the ones that did actually need the assistance, it was kind of hard for them because you had a lot of people to cry wolf. So when they did put these grievances in and say, hey, I really do need medical attention, it was kind of hard for them to distinguish who actually needed the help or not without actually going into the pod to see the actual inmate and see, okay, they really are cut, or they really do have a broke finger or something. They really do need help. And they kind of had to play it by ear, which was kind of rough because you never know. You can't determine who actually needs something until you actually go and see about it. So the grievances, it took a while for those grievances to get answered. You could put one in on Monday and not even hear back until Friday.
So, or longer, because I've longer. Yeah. So when you say it's hard to determine, what that makes me think about is the qualifications of a jailer or corrections officer to make that call. I mean, things that are specific to medical needs should be addressed by qualified medical personnel.
Absolutely.
Did that happen often, or were you guys in? Okay, so basically they left it up to the jailer or the corrections?
For the most part. I mean, because we had to make sure that we were CPR certified.
Okay.
And a lot of times, it's hard to say, okay, yeah, I'm CPR certified, but then when you have an emergency to happen, 9 times out of 10, CPR go over the head. You're like, oh God, I'm frantic. What do I do? Or, okay, if he's bleeding, I'll just give him a Band-Aid and they'll be okay. But I'm just speaking for me, of course. Whenever a problem arose, I didn't take it lightly because, one, I don't know you. Okay. I read the file and I see, and that was a big part of our job too, making sure you read the file to understand who this inmate is and what type of issues they have, whether they're allergic to something, they may have gotten hold of something and something happened. Now I really do need the medical attention. So whenever somebody always told me, hey, I got a problem. Okay, well, let's go fix it because I don't have the means. So that's clearly out of my hands. I would allow them to do a grievance, but I'm always one of those, I'm on top of stuff. So I'm calling too. And I probably got on people's nerves, but I just believe in helping people, period.
Right. So when they filed a grievance, you often would follow up?
Yes, I would. And they didn't have to come and tell me, can you follow up? I would just do that. That's just who I am.
Right. Now, that's unheard of. I mean, from my experience, okay?
Yeah.
I don't know too many individuals who were in your position that would take it upon themselves to follow up.
Right.
Because what I see is a lot of individuals who their grievances fall by the wayside.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah. Okay. So before we get ready to take a break, it's almost coming up on 10:30. We've got about 8 minutes. Let's talk a little bit about your transition and why you transitioned out of corrections. And then when we come back from the break, we'll talk about your new life and what
Okay.
you're doing, okay, around reentry and coaching, okay?
Okay.
So,
All right.
so what brought you to the place? How long did you stay in that place? And what brought you to the place where you decided that I want to do something different? I want to get out of this.
Well, I was there almost a year. I was coming up on a year, and before that year came, a lot of trouble started to arise. It was
Hmm.
a lot of stuff going on.
In
That
the jails you're referencing?
I'm sorry.
You're referencing in the jails?
Yes,
Okay.
in the jails. It was a lot more fights going on. A lot of officers were quitting,
Okay.
and that made it to it came back on the other officers as well as myself, to where we had to go from 12 hours to sometimes 16-hour shift, because we had to fill in those gaps. When you
Okay.
don't have officers to cover another pod, we got to rotate out, and it's no longer staying in your pod the entire time for your shift. Now you have to stay over here for 2 hours, go and switch out, just so you know you won't get gorged out being in one place. But it became to be a little bit tiresome for me.
Mhm.
It was
Okay.
getting old, and again, problems started to arise, and it started to involve all of us, including myself, and it became a problem. So a lot of stuff just started happening, and I'm trying not to give stuff away.
I
Um,
know, right?
yeah.
Because I'm thinking, okay, so now you only did a year. Most people reach that benchmark of being tired around maybe 5 years. You did a year, so I guess a year seemed like 5 years, given what you guys were
Man,
going through.
yeah, those last couple months started to feel like more like life sentences. It really did.
Okay, okay. What caused the your colleagues to start jumping ship? Was there anything in particular?
Um, the heat started coming down when it was a lot of fights that started to break out. Contraband started coming into the jail.
Okay.
And it just became horrific because everybody was pointing the finger, everybody was at the blame at this point.
Mhm.
And instead of voicing their opinions and having to fight, it wasn't me, or somebody blaming somebody, people just started leaving,
Uh-huh.
firing started happening, and yeah.
So the blaming, was it the COs blaming inmates, inmates blaming COs, a little bit of both?
A little bit of both. And
Uh-huh.
at one point, it was COs blaming COs.
Wow.
Dog
Okay.
eat dog world.
All right. So that's pretty much what got you to the place to say, hey, I've got to get out of here.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was real tight.
Mm-hmm.
It
Okay.
was real tight.
Okay. All right. So we're coming up on our midpoint break in the show. We're
Okay.
going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to uh, continue our conversations with Promises Huff, but this segment will be dedicated to her transition from a jailer in corrections into her new line of work as a mentor and life coach working with the reentry population and in Tennessee. That's correct?
Yes.
Okay. So when we come back, we want everyone to stay with us. We're going to take a quick break, and please continue to listen to the Justice Beat Talk Show. We'll be back in 3 minutes. All right, welcome back, Justice Beat listening audience. Thank you so much for returning for segment 2, in which we will talk with Ms. Promises Huff of Tennessee. She is a former corrections officer / jailer, and currently is serves as a life coach working with the reentry population and mentoring. She is going to discuss a personal transition of hers that led her into the reentry space and being a life coach. And so now I will give the floor to Ms. Huff to begin segment 2.
Thank you. I just wanted to share briefly how I ended up transitioning out. Um, working at the jail was getting very hard. During one of those days that I was working, I was actually confronted and threatened by an inmate working in there. And he actually told me, hey, if you don't give me a phone, then basically I'm gonna hurt your family. And I had a conversation prior to him coming to me as I was doing my security rounds. I was talking to my mom on the phone, and everything that I was talking about, he heard it. And I didn't know that until he approached me and told me, hey, listen, I need you to do something. Okay. And he told me, he said, look, I need the phone. And I'm thinking inside of the pod there, they had payphones in there that they could use. I told him,
Okay.
you know, I'll use the phone. But
Right.
he didn't want that phone. He wanted me to bring him a phone. And he told me what he would do if I didn't bring him the phone. So, of course, I was scared, but I felt like I needed to do what I needed to do without even thinking twice about anything. I agreed to bring him the phone. So
Okay.
I was a contributor to the contraband. Nobody knew that, but I did what I thought I needed to do at that time. 24, I thought I knew what I was doing. I just knew I needed to protect my family. That's all. Everything else was out the window after he approached me. So long story short, I ended up bringing him the phone. And the next day that I went in to actually see where the inmate was, he was already taken out. He was taken out. The phone was gone. And before I knew it, I was being approached. We had a uniform check, and it was something strange because we had never had a uniform check before. And when I got ready to go home, I was on my way home, and I got pulled over by a undercover. And he told me who he was, and I understood who he was. I already knew. But he also pulled out of his pocket, he had a Ziploc bag.
Okay.
That was the phone that I had gave the inmate, and I denied it to the death of me. I was denying it. And he said, "Okay, let's just be real. Okay, you're not, and you're not being prosecuted. I'm just asking you. I want you to be honest with me." And I'm not a good. I've never been a good liar, so I crumbled. And he told me. He said, "Whether you tell me the truth now or later, I got your fingerprints all over this phone." And I was thinking, no, you don't. You don't have my fingerprints. Yes, he did, because I clearly forgot when I got the job, I had to do fingerprints. So they had already done what they needed to do, and I was mortified. I was young. I'm thinking, oh my God, I just ruined my life. I was initially thinking that, hey, I'm gonna lose my job. I did. I lost my job, and I felt like hell came right behind it.
So let me ask you this. Your concern for family,
Yes.
the threats made against your family, could you have perhaps reported the inmate for the threat? I mean, was that an option? What happened in that moment in time where you were unable to really determine, hey, I'm going to trust this process here versus leaning in and giving in to the inmate? Just curious.
To be totally honest with you, I do think and I do feel like it was an option for me to go and report it. But prior to that happening, considering that the pod that I was in, I was only female in a pod of 60 inmates, all male. I had already gotten approached a couple of times. Not anything to cause any harm to me, but sexual approaches and just talking crazy to me. And I had mentioned it, and it kind of went over some heads. So it didn't take well with me. It didn't sit well with me. So I figured, you know what? I'm just gonna have to do it. No, you're fine. I'm just gonna have to take matters into my own hands. It's kind of what I felt like I needed to do, and that's what I did.
So the non-responsiveness from your superiors contributed to you not exercising other options when this inmate approached you?
It had a heavy bit to do with it. It did.
Okay. All right. So you lost your position.
I did.
Okay. And what were your next steps? Once that happened, how did you pull it together? And how did you reconcile first? Because sometimes when things like that happen, you have to take a step back and reconcile some things within yourself first before you can really make that real transition into your next phase of your life. So how did you handle that reconciliation with yourself and decision making?
Oh boy, it took me a long time to forgive myself for what I did, first of all, because I was so busy listening to everything and everybody that was in my ear, what was being said, how it was being said, because it didn't just end that I lost my job. I went to jail. And when I went to jail, I came back and was put on pretrial release for 9 months. And I was basically quarantined to my home. I couldn't leave. I could, if I did, I had to check in. And then after that, it was either choose to go to trial and find out that my fingerprints were exactly on the phone, or take a plea and go to prison for 6 months. That's exactly what happened.
Okay.
Yeah, I had to take a plea because if I went to trial, they were going to pin me for 15 to 30 years in prison.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you took the plea, did the 6 months, and is that how you connected this whole piece around your experience in reentry? Tell me what that 6 months was like for you.
Man, all right. I'm gonna try to be as brief and not so emotional as possible, but I've played this in my head since June the 6th, 2004.
Okay.
Every day. When I got there, it was very difficult because in my mind, I was going to have a lot of problems out of the inmates. That was not so. I had more problems out of the guards, the officers there than anything. I was put in segregation for 30 days before I was released to go to general population.
Okay.
And those 30 days, man, it was wild. I was in there by myself, and what most inmates or people would have done in segregation for 30 days might have strained them and made them go crazy. I thank God that I had a foundation in Jesus Christ, because had I not known how to pray, I would have been messed up real bad. So I learned how to depend on God more. And once I was released out of segregation to go to general population, again, it wasn't the inmates that had the problem. It was the officers. So I learned they respected me for whatever reason. And it gave me the opportunity to actually talk to some of the inmates that were there, because I couldn't find myself to call them inmates, because I was now one. I wasn't just the inmate, I was a number. Right. So they were just numbers, and they just really, they're human. They need somebody to talk to, just like I did. Because now I'm not just a former jailer, now I'm an inmate. So I got a chance to talk to all of these women, and the stories that I was hearing, they were just upset because nobody would listen. Grievance after grievance. They didn't take them seriously. Half of them were there just because I wanted to check and we had good benefits. They didn't care about what was going on. So that led me to say, you know what? If they're going to give me the opportunity, the platform to talk to them, to pray with them, and to help them, assist them with writing letters, because some of these ladies didn't know how to read. So they couldn't write letters properly. They
and see, and that probably also attributed to their the whole grievance process also, if they didn't know how to accurately represent what their needs were. Okay. Yes. And see, now you got to see it on both sides. As a jailer, as we were talking about the grievance processes and the many complaints that come in from inmates about access to medical care, treatment, etc. And then on the other side, the one experiencing that. Okay. Right. All right. So, okay, go ahead and continue.
So as speaking on the grievances, you already know I had it bad. They knew who I was, so it was like fill out a grievance and answer your request, girl. Bye. They would get my grievances, and I saw maybe two. Then looked at my grievances, was like, okay, shoved it up on a stack of papers. I saw one, ball it and throw it away, and was like, so now what? So and the inmates they were upset, like, how you just gonna treat her like that? Like, we know who she is, but she's still human. And the love, I know it's gonna sound crazy to somebody, but the love that I received from these ladies, that gave me some courage. They gave me some fire, because I'm like, I'm not just out here fighting for me no more. I'm fighting for them because they feel me. They feel what I'm going through. So, you know, I probably felt out about 15, 20 grievances while I was there. And it was just based on, you know, me. Once I actually got a cold once I was there, and it was hard for me to actually get assistance and ask them to, hey, can I just go to the infirmary? No, you can't go. Take what everybody else taking. What? Okay. So luckily, prayerfully, I had people in higher positions that actually that I was working with, because I worked in the kitchen, and they loved who I was. They loved the person. And they was like, okay, what do you need? What's going on? Because you don't look right. You look like you don't feel good today. I had to have the lieutenant that was actually in the kitchen that was over me to say, hey, look, we're not working you today. I'm taking you to the infirmary. What are they going to say? She's a lieutenant. And of course, a couple of those officers saw that and was like, oh, so she getting special treatment? No, it's just the fact you didn't want to put my grievance in, as well as other ladies here. They don't do that. And yeah, I told it. A lot of people say, oh, you know, snitches get stitches. At that point, it is what it is then, because now I'm one of them. So if I got to fight for my life, then I'm going to do that. But I'm sick and I need help. So I got a chance to do it. And I got a chance to see they don't really, you know, attend to your matters. They just like, okay, you should have handled your business so you couldn't get sick. You get treated any kind of way, and it's not fair. So I knew then, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna have to really do something. I don't know how I'm gonna do it, but I'm gonna do it.
All right. So that was, so you said you spent the first 30 days, what was it? And you said segregation.
Segregation,
All right. And then when did things begin to kind of balance out for you in this period?
Probably around maybe about a month later into being there out of segregation, when all of the other females and some of the other officers that weren't acting outside of their character began to really know who I was, and they saw me interacting with everybody else, and they saw, okay, you know, she's not as bad as they put her out to be. She's not as bad as what the newspapers said she was, you know. So just getting to know me and sitting down talking to me and finding out, okay, hey, she really does make sense. She does have a brain. So it began to be a lot easier. I started meeting a lot of good women in there, and they just came across bad times. And a lot of people think, you know, all these women, men, they go to prison, oh, they just bad from the start. That's not true.
Right.
That's not true. Half of them were just in there at the wrong, you know, in the place that we in at the wrong time.
Yeah.
So
go ahead.
No, it was hard, but you know, meeting what they call you begin to have this state family. I didn't like the term state family because that sounds like you're wonderful. I got a chance. Sisters, I gained what they call a state mom. I call her my angel mom, because if it wouldn't have been for her, man, I would have got my head beat in. I saw some crazy stuff in there, and it was right around me in the same pod that we was living in. I was watching girls get beat up and get shanked and stuff, and she covered me. She didn't have to do any of that. So, you know, and let me backtrack for a moment. In segregation, I met a young lady who, man, she pretty much helped save my life while I was in there, because I was going through. She heard me crying every night, and she would always say something funny to make me laugh. So when I left out of segregation, she left out probably a couple weeks after that. And to this day, we are like the best of friends. So, you know, it helped me, you know, to see other people, because they knew I didn't treat them like the number that they were. I saw them as women, as who I was. So that's how we became close.
Okay. All right. So let's move forward a little bit before we take the last break of the show and talk about your release, what that was like in terms of reintegrating, and your current efforts in the community and working with the reentry population.
Okay. Well, my release was hard. It wasn't hard like I didn't know what to do. It was hard because of the relationships that I had formed while I was in there. And a lot of these women, against whatever they believed in, allowed them to feel it. And when you leave, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm just like, oh, Lord. So when I found out that I was leaving, my actual release date had jumped a couple of days early. You know how they tell you, you know, we let you out for good behavior. So my caseworker, she called me and she told me I was leaving. And I was stunned because I was like, oh, God, yes, I'm getting ready to go. But wait a minute, because I can't tell these ladies I'm getting ready to leave, because one, it's getting ready to be an emotional time. But then two, you got the other ones that don't like me. So if word gets out, any and everything could happen to me, and it could prolong my release. So I had to keep that quiet. I had to keep it quiet to the hours, you know. So when I got out, it was a feeling that I'm never gonna forget. A couple of officers told me, hey, don't come back in here. And a couple of them, you know, oh, she'll be back. The negative ones, you always got the negative Nancy's. But you know, a couple of them was like, you know, you never even belonged in here in the first place. You know, get out there and do what you're supposed to do. I see you talking to these women. That's where you need to be. I heard it, but I was like, okay, whatever. So I got home and I was like, okay, what do I do now? Because not only am I going back home, but I'm going back to the area where all of this happened. Everybody knows what they think they know happened. You know, they heard it was one thing, and then I got you. What you looking for? Where are you trying to work? You need a job. I got this felony almost like right here. Everybody know it. So going in to fill out applications was hell, because I'm like, I got to answer this question. Have I ever been convicted of a felony? And I'm like,
and at that time, I think that the ban the box movement had not really expanded yet. And now,
Right.
yeah, now they have on most applications, you know, the employers are complying with the ban the box, but you cannot ask the question.
Wow. Yeah, it was definitely different back then, but I ended up prayerfully and luckily I was able to I was working a part-time job at McDonald's, and the store manager there, I loved him so much. He told me, he said, "Look, I don't know what's going on. I saw you on the news, but I don't care about all that. You need a job, you got a job with me." So I was like, man, I'm just so glad that I was able to be the great worker that I was. And I was able to get my job back because I needed something. I was not above working at McDonald's, even though I was working for the city and the state. I was making good money. But now I got to go back to minimum wage. I don't care at this point because I need the money. But just having to fill those applications out, I had to have 2 or 3 jobs because, man, it was just hard. I needed to get back to the place where I was used to having what I had. And when you're stripped of everything and you have nothing, you hit rock bottom, it's hard to climb back up that easy. It's easier said than done. You know, oh, girl, you going to make it? Really? Am I? I had to believe if I was going to make it or not. And a lot of them times I didn't believe. I didn't. I had faith to tell everybody else they could make it. But when it came down to me, I couldn't believe that. It was hard. So, you know, having to experience that, it was just rough.
Yeah. You know, one of the things that I'm always reminded of is and a lot of people don't want to talk about this. But when you look at the numbers, 1 in 3, okay, just listen at the numbers. 1 in 3 people in this country have been impacted by incarceration. But the majority of people don't talk about it, especially when it's in their family.
Yeah.
And how best will we be equipped to be able to advocate on behalf of people who really need advocating for if we don't even open our mouths about what the needs are?
Exactly.
And I think some of it is biases about, well, they did what they did. Yeah, that's true. We're not talking about guilt or innocence. What we're talking about here is when they come out, what do you do to help them reintegrate successfully? You don't have these long-term punitive punishments when they get out. It could be your mother, your brother, your sister, your cousin. Okay, they did what they did. Let's roll on and figure out how can we as a community help them. Yeah. But too many of us in the community, especially brown and black community, are really reluctant to do that. And also I want to say this. I also recognize, especially for family, it can be very difficult because many of these individuals burned their bridges with their family members.
Right.
Okay. So we have to acknowledge all sides, but I also am still very, very hopeful that we can at least say there's a level of responsibility at the community level to at least put some supports in place.
Right.
So that they can have that second chance that everybody screams about.
Okay? Absolutely.
All right. So we're coming up on our final break of the show. When we come back, we'll close out with you talking about your life's work right now based on your previous experiences, okay? And all of the excellent things that you're doing. Like I saw last week, and I believe it is, you had Ja White at an event that you all were hosting in Tennessee.
Yes.
For those of you who may not know who Ja White is, I mean, he played in several of Tyler Perry's movies and also isn't he into karate?
Heavy, very heavy.
Exactly. So the connections that you have and the folks who are coming out to support you is awesome. And it's more importantly, it's impacting communities that really need someone to say, hey, we need a second chance. So when we come back from our 3-minute break, we'll pick up at that point. So Justice Beat listening audience, please stay with us. We're going to take a 3-minute break and we'll be right back. Welcome back, Justice Beat listening audience. Thank you so much for rejoining us for our final segment. And we're going to let Ms. Huff talk a little bit about her current work in the space of reentry and mentoring and life coaching. And Promises, I also want you to kind of talk a little bit at the end about your book release, because we'll be having you back, I believe it's on the 18th of April, to actually spend the entire show on your book, where you'll do a book read and we'll have some chats with our listening audience regarding your book, okay?
Perfect.
All right, great.
Okay, so as I transitioned, it took me a few years to get it together. I actually started taking a life coaching class last year. Before I even go into that, thank God for my husband. Lord have mercy.
Don't
He is such a
forget him.
support system.
Yep.
For real. Him and my kids, my parents, my brothers, my aunt, man, they have instilled in me, man, to go for it. And if I had not had my husband beside me every step of the way, man, I would have folded a long time ago. But he encouraged me, to hey, this is what you're supposed to be doing. Go out and help these people, man. They need you. And realizing that my testimony is not for me, I was like, okay, I get it now. So last year, I came upon one of the groups that I actually do some volunteer work called Beautiful Spirited Women. We were I was actually on the founder's page, Crystal Chapman. I was looking on her page and I saw that she had went for life coaching. I was like, I said, I always, wanted to do some type of life coaching. I was always a mentor, been mentoring for years.
Right.
And I said, I need to take it up a notch. Scared as I was like, oh Lord, okay, I don't know what I'm jumping into, but I'm gonna contact this lady, Stacey Bryant, out of Atlanta. And I said, hey, kind of just want to know what's going on with your life coach. What do I need to do? She said, enroll. I said, okay. And she said, don't worry about anything else.
Mm-hmm.
She said, because I know that this is divine connection. She said, I don't even know you, but I know because one of my students. She said, I'm gonna just tell you to get in the class and just go for it. I said, okay. So I had no idea that I was going to learn as much as I learned, because I knew I was passionate about what I needed to do and what I wanted to do. But along with finding my passion for what I wanted to do as a life coach, I also learned exactly at 40 years old, what my actual purpose in life was. And to some people, that's like, that took you that long? Yeah, it did, because what I thought was what it was. It really wasn't. It was what I wanted, not what my purpose was. So, when I sat back and I started thinking, after I started taking the classes and listening to class and listening to Coach Stacey just talk, I started remembering, like, man, so all of this was actually working for my good. All of these women that I was talking to in prison, in jail, mentoring outside of that, while I was working in other jobs, I was always that go-to, that listening ear, and they was always asking me for advice. What should I do? And I'm like, I don't know. And I'm like, God, just give me the right words to say. And all of that led into the life coaching that we were doing. And we had to do a project, to find your niche, find what it is that you're really good at. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm good at hair. I'm also a licensed stylist, so I can do the hair. And most of the time, well, all of the time when I have clients, we release our stuff when we're in that chair. It's just like, girl, let me tell you what happened. My life is just champ. And we just sitting there listening, like, okay. And they're like, what you think I should do? Okay, so I'm life coaching in my chair too. Okay. So I was like, all right, look. So maybe it is that I just need to help women, help at-risk youth, because that's what I'm connected to. Also, with the event that you saw that I was at, was actually being held by Heal the Hood. The founder of that, Mr. Liddell Beeman, he was one, man, he's an awesome dude. He brings in not just anybody, but people that are actually for healing the hood. So I got an opportunity to do that. And that's how you saw me with Mr. Michael J. White. But in the life coaching, I knew that my experiences was going to help somebody. So I fumbled with it. I was juggling, like, okay, what type of coach? Like, I want to be able to, I'm a life coach. Yeah. I mean, life happens. Anybody can coach life coaching. They can do that. But I need to be in something specific. What is it that what's going to set me aside from everybody else is doing life coaching? And I was like, you know what? Okay, maybe I just need to do this book. And as my coach started talking to me, my husband started telling me, hey, you got it right here. It's been in your face the whole time. I'm like, jail. Talk about your experience. It's people locked up right now. They need you. They need to know what's going on. It's officers that are going through the same thing that you went through. They need your help. And I'm like, they're not going to listen to me. Yes, they are. You need to get out of your comfort zone, Promises, and go talk to people. They need you. So after a lot of prayer, fasting, and meditation, man, I was like, Lord, okay, what you want me to do? And it was almost like knowing that, God has a sense of humor. It's like, he was looking at me like, that they already told you. I sent the messengers. Listen.
Right.
I was like, okay. So I found myself migrating towards prison again. And it was hard because even though it was almost 16 years ago, I lived that every day. Even, it took me a while to even get back into the system, because even after I was in prison, I actually went back. I was working in Orlando, Florida for a couple months. I had went just to transition to see, just to get out and do something different. And I ended up working back in the prison system as a residential advisor. And that was just more so, just trying to place inmates once they come out of the prison system, finding them a place to stay, working as a liaison with the community. And it lasted for a while, but I got real tired of the whole putting in grievances, and they were back at it again. I'm like, it's not just North Carolina, it's Florida too. Y'all don't listen. I want to go back home. So that's what I did. When I came back to North Carolina, I was like, okay, it's just gonna take me a minute. And after me and my husband, we figured, hey, this is what we need to do. Let's just try something different. I ended up here in Tennessee, started taking the classes, and when I graduated in January, I was like, oh my gosh, yes, I graduated. Now what? Like, what do I do?
Okay, now we're gonna have to bring this forward because our time is coming up. Okay. So basically, you are really focused on the reentry population. Do you focus primarily on women?
Primarily on women, but juveniles, women and juveniles. I'll eventually move back into the male population, but right now I'm focused on women and juveniles.
Okay. Yeah. And there's a great need. I mean, we have been recognizing women trailblazers in the justice reform space all month, and you get to close out our month today. Awesome. There's a tremendous need. Yes. And women are the fastest growing population to enter the system. So what you're doing is critical. So if you could in 1 minute, let's talk a little bit about or do you want to give out the name of the book? Is it
I can.
Okay, and is it available for pre-orders? Because I know that we're going to have you back in April and focus solely on your book. So if you want to listening audience a little bit about the book that's coming out and where it's available to purchase.
Actually, there is not just one book, it's two. I have one book that is called Broken Silence. That's actually about me and my experience as a jailer, but my whole experience inside of the prison system. Okay. And my release. And the other book that is somewhat attached to it is called You Were Built for This. That book is basically a lot of encouragement, motivational, and inspiring quotes that we basically grab from scripture from the Bible, and we basically just kind of giving motivation and encouragement out of that that coincides with the everyday entrepreneur, the everyday worker. So it's just giving you inspiration, because I have what I do every morning. I send out inspirational messages, and I have a Facebook group that I put that same message on there, and it's just a 30-day book worth of nothing but positivity. Right. And just talking about how you're built for this in every aspect. So both of those books, we're working on our pre-order date right now. Hopefully we should have it released by Monday or Tuesday. But it'll be out there, so that way on my website, that'll be up too. So that way they can connect to my website and be able to order both books or one or whatever they choose to do.
Okay, great. And is the publisher the one that's developing the website? Because I want to give out a website address if you have it.
No, I don't have it right in front of me right now. That's fine.
You can share it with me, and I'll post it to our show page after the show. Okay. Postings. Okay. All right. Well, look, Promises, thank you so much. This has been really good. This has been a real treat because you were able to address this issue on so many different levels. Okay. And I think that our listening audience is really getting a full purview of how this subject matter is so important. And it can happen to anyone. All right. And while we need to remain sensitive to the issue. Okay. And I thank you so much for joining us. And Justice Beat listening audience, thank you so much for checking in with us today. We trust that you enjoyed the content and were sharing and liking and telling your friends. And we'll be back next month because wait a minute. Today is the 21st. So actually, we have one more show that we're going to focus on women trailblazers, and that'll be next Saturday. So again, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate you, Ms. Huff.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome, and make it a great week ahead. God bless.
God bless you too.
Thank you for listening to the Justice Beat. If you like what you heard and found the information useful, then support the Justice Beat radio show by spreading the word and telling a friend.